Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Managed Solutions Connect Symposium. And thank you for attending today's session, which is the Introduction to Power Platform. I will be your host, Caitlin Watts, and your presenter today will be Aaron Moon. He is a Power Platform Solution Architect and has been working with Microsoft Business Applications for over 5 years, with a major focus on digital transformation and process automation. So at this time, I would like to go ahead and introduce Aaron, and Aaron, you could take it from here.
Awesome, thank you so much. So thank you everybody for joining this session to talk about the Power Platform. I get pretty excited talking about these tools, so I'll try to hold my excitement down a little bit. Just to give you, this is the little blurb that you probably saw, but we're going to talk about the Power Platform, which is a Microsoft tool that really can help you to digitally transform your business with low-code sort of tools that help you build things. You don't have to be a developer, but you can build apps and dashboards and different types of automation with easy to use tools. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. A quick introduction of myself. I like to say this is a picture of me before the quarantine. I had a little bit less hair than I do now. So I'm a Power Platform Solution Architect. I've been working in the Microsoft space for about 5 years now, mainly around the Dynamics 365 business applications. So those, I've been more focused on the customer engagement side of those applications, which, if you're not familiar, is the sales, service, marketing sort of front end applications, but also I've got experience working with the Dynamics ERP applications for finance and supply chain and things like that. But as Kate said, my focus is really on architecting and implementing solutions for companies to help them utilize and their data, build applications, build automation, and the main tool that I use on a day-to-day to do those things is Microsoft's Power Platform. So a quick breakdown of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to give a quick overview, just say look at the platform at a high level, and then we're going to dive into 3 key tools that are a part of this Power Platform. And those are PowerBI, Power Automate, and PowerApps. So keeping that power in the name there. As I do go through, you're welcome to put your questions in the question area of the meeting, and I'll try to answer those as we go. But we will, I'll try to make time here at the end for sort of an open question and answer period. So what is this Power Platform that I'm talking about? Well, it's really comprised of a number of different tools, services, and they all connect to the Microsoft ecosystem. So if you're using Office 365 for things like Outlook, Word and Excel, SharePoint, those can be connected into this platform. If you're using the Dynamics business applications like finance, supply chain, sales, customer service, marketing, etc., those can be plugged into this platform, as well as Azure, some of the tools that Microsoft is providing in that space, as well as lots of other applications. So while you may not have a Dynamics or a Microsoft ERP or business application, we can use this tool with QuickBooks or other, put in whatever ERP or other business application you may have. There's some way that we can probably connect in and use this platform. When we look sort of below that first line at Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, those are the 3 that we're going to be talking about today in a lot of detail. But we've got some other pieces that I'll touch on as we go. Things like virtual agents. You can think of a chat bot that pops up when you're on a website. The common data service is a place to really store data. We've got data connectors. So again, ways to connect into maybe that, application that you have that's not one that I've talked about so far. And we've also got AI, so features that we can use some of Microsoft's learning and development that they've done around AI to really enhance what we're doing with our business data and our business processes. So that's the platform as a whole. Again, the main bar there in the middle is what we're going to be focusing on. We're not going to talk much about virtual agents today, but we'll be talking about Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate. So let's start diving into each of those three areas, starting with a closer look at Power BI. So if you aren't familiar, what is Power BI? It's really a tool. It's a collection of services and applications that allow you to build business intelligence and build visualizations, charts, dashboards, reports that can expose your data, sort of make sense of that data, and then expose it to you in a visual way. So the process here really is that you go out, you find your data. It may be online, it may be in Excel, it may be in a business application, it may be in an ERP or a CRM system. You pull that into Power BI, and then Power BI has tools that allow you to sort of build your data model, mesh those together and say, this is how these connect. And then you go to the visualization side where you're going to build a report, you're going to generate a chart, or lists, or whatever that custom way that you want to see your data might be. And so Power BI is very powerful. In order to do that sort of a process that we're talking about, you really have three main areas of Power BI. You've got a desktop tool that allows you to pull in that data and make sense of it. You've got the Power BI service, which is how you can expose that to a web browser, and you can now see those reports and dashboards. And then you finally got the mobile version. So once you do all of that work and you generate you build your data, you understand it, you visualize it, then you can put it into a mobile app and have that on the go. So while you're in a car, you can pull this up and look at those data points and KPIs. Microsoft has really been the leader in this business intelligence and analytics space, and this is in large part because of Power BI. So this right here is the Gartner Magic Quadrant. This is from 2019 now, so I think there are some more updated versions of this, but Microsoft has continually been a leader, been at the top right of that graph there. In this space. So we're seeing a lot of companies adopting Power BI and using Power BI. So if you haven't had a chance to try it out and look at it, I recommend that you do so. So I've got a quick example just to show you some screenshots of what Power BI looks like. So I'm going to walk through those right now. So the first thing is to connect to your data. And so this is a screenshot here of what that looks like when you're basically building a query that's going to pull in your data from wherever it may be. In this case, I believe we're connecting to a dynamic CRM system. So we're connecting and pulling in this case, cases, or you can think of these as issues from like a customer service desk. So we're going to be pulling those in, and we can write, different statements to filter those, and you can see the three columns that we've got here. You can also, have column changes and different manipulations that you may do, which showing here all the different things that you can do to basically build your query. So as you're pulling that in, I want to make this change to this column. I want to change this to make my data easier to understand. And then if there's different, more advanced things that you want to do, you can build different measures and calculations into these queries. So when you pull that data from the system, you can run this analysis and generate some additional insights and numbers off of your data. Once you've got that data, then you build the visual. You say, how do I want to show this data? What makes the most sense? You can have these, charts and lists. You can have different slicers. So on the left-hand side, you'll see at the bottom, there's some, date range slicers that you can change the date range you want to see, change the different filters, as well as just at the top left, big KPI numbers. When you've built that report out, then you can share it with your colleagues, with people within your organization to say, here, go check out this report that I built, with our business data. So that's just a quick overview there of Power BI. Again, a great business intelligence and visualization tool. I have a hard time with that word. And so I do recommend that you go and check that out if you are not familiar with Power BI. So as we move forward here, I'm going to start talking about the next section, which is Power Automate. So let's dive in and talk about what Power Automate is. So Power Automate is really a workflow automation tool. It's about helping to move data around, send and receive notifications, do different types of approvals processing. There's just a whole range of different things that this tool is capable of, and it's really just astounding the ways that people have adopted this tool and the things that people are doing with Power Automate. If you've heard of the tool If This Then That, it's sort of in that range. You're going to have something that happens, a trigger, and then your automation is going to go do something else. And so you can actually go out to the Power Automate website, and you can search through templates of things that others have already built, things connecting to Microsoft services, things like OneDrive and Outlook, but you can also connect to things that are not Microsoft. You can connect to Salesforce, you can connect to Facebook and Twitter and Google services, Google Drive. There's so many different things that you can connect to, and you can go out here, just find these templates to get some ideas of what's possible. One that I like is there's one that will basically send you a push notification or a text message when you get an email from your manager. So you can sort of think of a scenario where you've got an important thing that comes into your, an email that comes in, and you want to make sure that you don't miss it. You can have a Power Automate be monitoring your Outlook, and when that comes in from a certain person or with something in the title, then you can have it send you a text message or send you a notification of some kind. So that's just one example. It's a pretty simple example. But as you dive into Power Automate, you can really get into more complex scenarios if you'd like. You can do different, multiple steps. In my example, I got an email and I sent a text message. Really, we're talking about two things: the trigger that I got the email, and then the action. I'm just sending a text. But we may have lots of different steps that we want to complete. We may need to loop through lists of records. We may need to have conditional statements. We may need to do things in parallel. There are lots of possibilities that you can get into. And you can really start to use this for your business application scenarios. So connecting your business data. Power Automate really becomes the bridge between applications that previously couldn't talk together. It can take information from your financial system and it can put it into your CRM system. And so take the financial data and move it, or maybe you've got an approvals process for something that needs to cross multiple systems and you need to pull data from different places. Power Automate's very powerful in that it can do that. It can connect to those and really streamline your workflow and your process across multiple systems. I've got a quick example of just what Power Automate looks like, and in this scenario is actually going to do an approval. So what we're going to do here is start an approvals process from a document that we've uploaded to a folder. So we've got a shared document library, and in this case, I'm using SharePoint. And I've placed this document, this Word document, out here in this document library. And I need my manager to take a look at it, and they need to approve this document, say this is ready to go. And so what I'm going to do within SharePoint, you've now got a button in the command bar. Right here in my screenshot, it's called Flow. And so just a PSA, I probably should have said this at the start. This tool used to be called Flow, formerly known as Flow. Now it's referred to as Power Automate. But you'll have that button in the command bar, which now will say Automate. And I can click on that and actually run this approvals process. So I'm going to choose that first option there to basically kick off my approval process. And what it's going to do is it's going to open a little window on the right-hand side and say, all right, we're ready to run this automation, but we need you to provide a message to send to your manager. And so I'm just going to type in here and say, hey, please look at this document, maybe look at paragraph 2, I changed some wording. And so I've got the option there, it prompts me to do that, then I'm going to hit run. And when I do, it's going to kick off Power Automate in the background, and it's going to start this approvals process. So now we're going to switch hats, and we're going to put the manager's hat on. So now as the manager, I see an email come in that basically says, hey, you've got to approve this document. And I can put in details. I can say, you know, if I had that message that I typed in, I can put the message into the body of the email, as well as, if it's a little small, but hopefully you can see, I've got a link directly back to that document out on SharePoint. So I'm able to, as the manager, be able to look at this, get the message, click on the document link, open it up here, review what I need to do, and then in the email body itself, I can just say approve or deny. And I'll get the option to say why, a reason I'm approving or denying. Now, there's actually, so the email method is one way a manager can do this approval process. There's actually a couple other methods. One is within the Power Automate portal. There's an approvals area where I can go and see these little cards, these approval cards here that basically allow me to see the same information, the details, and have the option to approve and reject. And I can also download the mobile app for Power Automate. And there I'll also be able to see my approvals that I can. So if I'm on the go and I've got the mobile app, I could, in a taxi, in an Uber, get the notification I need to approve something, open it up. I can click on the link if I've got, you know, a Word editor on my phone. I can review that document, and then I can choose to approve right there from my mobile phone. So a pretty cool example here. Again, we can have that, you know, complete the process and send an email response back saying, yes, it was approved, or no, it was denied. But the whole point of this is, with these tools, is that they're visual and they're fairly easy to use. When you're building something with these tools, you don't have to be able to code. You don't need to be a developer in order to do this. So this is the designer right here that I'm showing, where you can see the different steps that my automation is going through. The very first one will be the trigger, what causes it to start. And that's when that file was, you know, I triggered it from that file location. It does a couple things interacting with SharePoint. If you look at the logos, the SharePoint logo, the Office 365 logo, the approvals engine within Power Automate. And then the last step at the bottom there is that it's going to send that email, but you'll see I've got a branch, and that's basically branching on whether or not it's approved or denied. We'll send two different emails. If it's approved, we've got happy language. If it's denied, we've got some sad language in there. So you can see this is how you build these Power Automate flows, and it's very visual, very easy to use. All right, so that was my closer look at Power Automate. Hopefully that was helpful and interesting. Again, if you guys do have any questions as I'm going through, please feel free to put those into the questions area. I'm going to jump in now to probably the piece that I like the most, and that is talking about Power Apps and how you can build business applications. So let's jump in. And when we talk about Power Apps, I actually need to talk about 3 different sort of main types of Power Apps. And I'll try to sort of get through these, but there's a different sort of focus for each of these, but they're all easy to build. You do not have to be a developer, or you don't need to be a coder. You can use these tools to visually build an application that can be used in an enterprise space. So starting on the left-hand side, the Canvas Power Apps are really focused on streamlined mobile experiences, mobile or on a desktop computer, but they're focused on the experience and making it so that it's you know, really easy, really user-friendly, and focused on what your users need to do. When you build these applications, you are doing sort of a click and drag experience, and we call this, it's also what we refer to as WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get. And that means that while you're building it, you're seeing how it's going to look when it's out in the hands of the people who are going to use it. So you can think of that sort of like PowerPoint, right? You build your slide and then it looks the same when you go to present it. It's the same with these applications. You're clicking and dragging, you're resizing, you're recoloring, you're building your app to look the way you want it. And then when you hit play, it looks the same out to your end users, as opposed to a traditional development where you're writing lines of code and that produces something on the other side. So these are sort of, again, focused on your user experience. And what that really means is we tend to see these shine when they're focused on a particular smaller task or a particular role. So something that you open up and you've got a couple screens and it lets you do what you need to do quickly. So that's sort of, you know, it's focused, tailored. But the cool thing about those is that you can connect to lots of different data sources and pull data from different places. So I could have one app that pulls data from SharePoint, from Outlook, from my ERP, from my CRM, and my user, the person who runs the app, doesn't have to know where all of that data comes from. So let's jump in and just get a little bit more information about Canvas apps and see what this looks like. So when you're actually building the Canvas app, this is a screenshot here of that designer. So you'll see in the middle, I've got sort of a blank canvas that I'm building my app on. So I click and drag and I place the things that I want. And then on the left and the right-hand side, you've got different types of properties and things that you can use to help change the way that piece, that component that you're putting in your app looks, the way it feels, and the way it interacts with other components in your app. Like I mentioned, it is WYSIWYG, so what you see is what you get. And as you're building this, you can use expressions or formulas to help and make your app react in different ways. And these expressions or formulas are very similar to Excel. There's actually probably 20 or 30 that came right from Excel. You can do a sum formula and different things like that. So that's the one piece where this can get a little bit more into feeling like you might be coding or developing, is when those expressions get a little complex. But again, pulling data in from different places is really where this type of application shines. I've got a quick example of what a Canvas Power App might look like. All right, so this app I'm going to show is a flight check-in app. So you can think of someone who is on the ground when a plane arrives. And they're going to pull this up on a mobile device, and they're checking in this plane to say the flight has arrived, here's the airline, here's the flight number, and here's the exact time of arrival. So they've got this on a mobile device, they fill these things out, and then they hit check-in flight to go to the next screen. And then they can continue to do more actions that they may need to do as after this flight has landed. So processing the weight of the plane, the cargo, when they're offloading it, and the time that they're able to complete that processing. And so you can think of the Canvas app here again as this is focused for one person or one role, one type of person who needs to do this checkout process. They need to fill in this information. It needs to be simple, and they're just filling it out, clicking next, and it's going screen, screen, screen until they're done. So that's a good example there of a Canvas app focused user experience. So let's jump in to the next type, which is the model-driven Power Apps. So model-driven Power Apps are a little bit more robust, if you will. They are built on the Common Data Service. So I mentioned the Common Data Service very early on. It is a place where we can store data. And so these model-driven apps require that you store your data in that Common Data Service. But there's a lot of things that you gain by doing that. One thing is that you essentially can quickly generate these model-driven apps based on your data model. So assuming that you have your data defined, you know the tables and relationships that make up that data, and so you really have that relational data model, it's very easy to then, as a second step, generate one of these applications very quickly. So as opposed to the Canvas apps we just talked about, where you're clicking and dragging and moving things around, these types of apps are not that way. They're a little bit more larger, focused on larger components, and they use an interface and sort of a framework that Microsoft has developed. And so those bigger blocks allow us to quickly say, build me an app that includes these 5 things, and then it can spit out an app that's already well put together and has a certain, they all sort of look similar in that way, but you can spin them out quickly, and there's a lot of functionality there that you get right away. And so these are really good for modeling longer and more expansive business processes. So not just modeling the fact that the plane was checked in, but the process of checking it in, to cleaning, to preparing for the next flight, to loading. You could have more of a expansive business process tracked within one of these applications. And so for that reason, we typically see these used for more end-to-end. You can think of more maybe back office type of processes, someone sitting at a desk rather than someone who's out in the field using that flight check-in app. So let's look at a little bit more information about these model-driven applications, and see a quicker or a bigger screenshot here. So I've got a screenshot of an example of a model-driven application. Again, these are focused on some bigger pieces, so you're always going to have a menu on the left-hand side. You're always going to have the command bars that are at the top, and so it's a lot more sort of traditional business application feel. You have components within, so right here you can see the different squares that we're working with on this page. This page is actually referred to as a form, so you've sort of got some larger components, forms, views, or lists that you can work with to really generate these applications quickly. And I mentioned that, again, Microsoft is sort of providing the UI, the way this looks and feels, and that means that it's an enterprise user experience. It is rich and responsive. If you're on a smaller device, it sort of shrinks itself and makes itself look better. If you're on a bigger device, it sort of changes as your screen changes, which is really, really good. And again, one piece of this that I didn't highlight, but the last bullet there, it really enables you to reuse components and generate these apps, multiple apps quickly. So it's that reusability again that's key. When you're building these apps, I did mention it's a little bit different. This is the one of the designer tools that you use. So it is more choose, I want this, and this in my application, and then it builds the front end for you. So no clicking and dragging here. This is a little bit bigger screenshot of what the model-driven application can look like. Again, the menu on the left-hand side, command bars at the top, and this is an example of a view or a list of information, as opposed to before we looked at a form where it would expose information and let you view and edit. So that's the model-driven application. So we've talked Canvas, now we've talked model, and now the final one is portals. So PowerApp Portals are really for the scenarios where you want to expose your business data to the outside world. And so you want to really have some sort of website that's perhaps, anyone can visit, or maybe you need to log in some way. Maybe you have a profile that you log into, but it's a website out there that people can go to, and you can have them interact with you in some way. These portals are connected to the Common Data Service database. So same as the model-driven applications, it does require use of that service, the Common Data Service. But it's sort of a different perspective here, reaching out to your external the consumer, the customer, people outside of your organization. So let's look at a PowerApp portal in a little bit more detail here. So PowerApp portals, again, are very similar to the first two that we've talked about in that they're low code. So you can actually build one of these websites with a designer that's similar to other website designers if you've used those before. But it's going to create a website that's responsive and that can be made available to people outside of your organization. You can set up ways for them to have profiles and be able to log in. And then when you do that, you can, of course, start to expose, once they've authenticated, or even if they haven't in some cases, you can expose your data that's in the Common Data Service to them. So this is really powerful when you talk about if you've got a customer service organization and you want your customer to be able to log in and see an issue or a case that they've reported. And so you want them to be able to see the status of that, or perhaps you want your consumer or your customer to log in and place orders. You can do that with a portal like this. So I'll just end to sort of wrap up my Power Apps portion here. Was saying, why Power Apps? Why spend this time to talk about these? Why explain the different types? And the reality is that, almost everybody can benefit in some way from a business application. Whether or not it's mobile, like on your phone, or whether or not it's just something that you log into on your desktop. But not everybody has the time, the money, the resources to build a business application. And typically what we see is, everybody's got that crazy Excel file. Everybody has some process that they're doing that could probably be automated. Maybe you're still doing things that are on paper. And when we talk about these tools and Power Apps specifically, these tools can really be a way to implement some of those things, to make some of those things happen that otherwise wouldn't happen. And the reason that is that these tools are easy to use. You don't need to be a developer. you could go and build an app for your situation, to replace that Excel file, or to help automate that process. You could go build a Power Automate workflow, and you could fix that problem. And so we're seeing lots of organizations make the move to start using these tools and really be able to accelerate some of the things that they're doing and get to things that they weren't able to get to before. And so that's really why I want to spend the time to talk about Power Apps. And again, talk about, this platform as a whole. So you've now seen Power BI, the business intelligence tool. You've seen Power Apps, the tool to build Canvas, the model-driven apps, or a portal. So a way for your people in your organization to input data and work with data, or even consumers or customers. And then Power Automate, a way to automate your workflows and your processes. What we didn't talk about today was, again, the Power Virtual Agents. So that's your chat bot that you can have set up. And again, that tool is what we refer to as low code, right? It's you're able to do that. You're able to build a chat bot, and you don't have to be a developer, which is just crazy to think about that. So that's my presentation here. Really, that's the meat of what I had. I've got a couple quick links and things I can point you to go learn more about these tools. There's a number of Microsoft resources at docs.microsoft.com. That's a great place to go. And there's a couple of these aka.ms links that have a lot of different resources all linked together. And of course, you can just go to powerplatform.com to get to Microsoft's main site, where you can sort of explore what this platform is. So I hope that you enjoyed that presentation. I actually ended up finishing a little bit sooner than I was expecting. I must have talked quickly. So if you guys do have any questions, I'd like to open that up. Please feel free to put your questions into the questions area.
Opportunities to use Power Apps with on-premise. So
got to get myself off mute there. Yes. So we can, I must have forgot to mention that. That's why I was a little bit fast. So yes, we can connect to on-premise data. With any of these tools, you can use what's referred to as an on-premise data gateway, basically something that you install onto a server in your network, and then these tools will work. You can connect to SQL with Power Apps or with Power Automate. And if you're just wanting to report on your data with Power BI, you can also pull in your data that way as well.
Questions on how many users do they need to subscribe? And then for scaling, do I need to subscribe to all users or just an admin developer use?
Gotcha. Okay, so that's a little bit more, that's a licensing question. So you can go and sign up for a free trial, one person today, if you wanted to. For some scenarios, so there's licensing gets complicated. For your basic scenarios, you may already have all of your users licensed underneath Office 365. So if you're paying for Office 365, it does include Power Apps and Power Automate capabilities there. So to your question, you might want to license an admin or developer if you're going to be building things. But then for others, if they're just going to be using what you build, you might be able to get away with that Office 365 license. Now, but again, licensing can be complicated, and it's unique to each scenario. So I would say just look into it and see what you might need depending on what you're trying to build.
Where is Microsoft with CRM, and how will the Power Apps affect their solution?
That is a great question. So I mentioned that I work with Dynamics CRM. That's sort of my background before PowerApps became a thing. And basically what has happened is Microsoft took the Dynamics CRM online platform and said, this is really cool. It has a lot of things here. We can use some of these things. And so when we talked to, I highlighted it briefly. I didn't have a slide about it, but the common data service is really Dynamics CRM's database. So the common data service is really just the CRM database. And now the newest versions of Dynamics CRM, or as we refer to it, customer engagement, sales, customer service, those applications are actually just PowerApps. So it's really interesting, I think. So to answer your question, PowerApps becoming a thing is really causing Dynamics CRM to be improved. They're putting a lot of time into this, into PowerApps as a whole, and that is in turn helping the Dynamics CE CRM space as well. So hopefully that makes sense.
Sure. Question follow-up is, do they have a plan for nonprofits, for a nonprofit solution for CRM?
A nonprofit solution. So I believe there's actually a starting template that Microsoft has put out. They've put out a couple what they refer to as starter or accelerator templates. And I believe that there's one for nonprofit space. So that's something that you can look into. I don't know if I've got time, I can go try to find a link now, but. I'll go look right now and see if I can grab it.
Perfect. Perfect. And I will continue to wait for a second for more questions to come in.
If you just Google Dynamics CRM Nonprofit Accelerator or Dynamics Nonprofit Accelerator, you should get a number of things that pop up. I will try to, I'll put a couple of those links into the chat. And there's a number of them, not just for the nonprofit space. There's a couple others as well. There's one for healthcare. There's one for education, I think.
Perfect. I want to take an opportunity to thank Aaron for joining us today and guiding us through the platforms and everything today. So thank you all who attended. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, everyone.